Hello and Happy New Year. Welcome to What's Your Testimony? I am one of the hosts, Dr. Sharita Williams, and I have a special guest back with me today, Natalie Houston. She is a counselor here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and she's going to follow up with us. We just did a segment with her last year on holiday stress. So now we're going to talk about why counseling is so important. We know so many Americans suffer with mental stress, and mental stress is a part of our everyday life. But now we have so many mental health issues, sometimes we need to seek counseling. And so we're going to have Natalie here today talk about her profession. Natalie, are you there?
I'm here. Good to see you all. Thanks for having me. So, why do people get counseling? Like, why would we? What's the whole purpose of counseling? Well, I think that counseling helps a person be guided towards and through the process of becoming more whole, more human. Helps us be more connected, authentic, and present. And that's certainly a huge part of, that's just life, right?
Right.
So, but sometimes we get really distracted from, why are we here? What are we doing here? We're relational beings, not doing beings. So, but how we get there to the process of becoming more whole is different from counselor to counselor and client to client. So that's why we're going to talk about counseling.
So Natalie, what is the goal of counseling? What is the ultimate goal? If I'm a person who's maybe I could have trauma or I could have some type of stress issue, what will be my main goal of seeking counseling?
Well, as far as the specific goals, that's going to vary from person to person. But the overall goal is becoming more whole, becoming more connected, authentic, present. So I think those things help us to become more who we're made to be. And then as far as the individual issues or the individual specific goals, that's going to vary from person to person and from issue to issue.
So Natalie, you talk about being whole, and I may feel like I'm whole. So what would make me want to dig into my past? And now I'll be digging into my past. Why would I want to dig into my past and not move forward? Or maybe I can't move forward because I need to dig into my past. How do I determine?
Well, that is a great question. Well, some people kind of think that counselors just want to make you uncomfortable, or that the therapist just likes to hear your stories. But a good therapist is really going to help you dig into what makes us do what we do, and because our pain and our past, it's kind of like mold in the refrigerator. If we don't take care of it, it's going to grow. It affects everything. It'll make us sick. And so we want to take care of that, because otherwise it's going to limit our progress going forward. Now, if there's nothing really significant that we need to deal with from our past, then it helps just to keep our head clear, to keep grounded. But often our struggles in adulthood are related to a belief connecting to experiences in childhood. So we want to get rid of the source of the problem and be able to move more fully into the future, more free. And we can make external changes, and sometimes those are we can make short-term external changes, but without dealing with the internal history, we can end up repeating in cycles what we're trying to change. And that's where most people come into counseling, because they're like, I'm just so tired of dealing with the same thing over and over. Why can't I ever get through this? So.
You know, now, like, I hear you say that, but why can't I just get over it? Why can't I just move forward? What is hindering me from just moving forward?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple parts of the brain that are significant here. We have the prefrontal cortex, which is right here. This is like the CEO in charge of connecting and executive functioning in the brain. And it helps us make decisions, helps us be able to connect with God, self, and others. And it helps us to make a choice like, oh, I have A, B, and C. I'm going to choose A because of this, this, and this. We have another part of our brain called the amygdala, and it's back here. And the amygdala is like a fire detector of the brain. It's very small but mighty. It sounds a strong alarm. And in trauma, stress, or sensory triggers, our amygdala sounds the fire alarm, and we go into fight or flight or freeze. When this happens, our system becomes overwhelmed. The prefrontal cortex will shut down, not completely, because it's just kind of like it dims the lights. I liken it to our computers being in sleep mode. Or having too many windows up on our computer and the computer freezes. So that means the rational part of our brain gets kind of closed down a little bit, and they can see this on a PET scan, what happens under stress, that on a PET scan, this part will go dim and the amygdala turns bright red. And so that means that our emotional, reactive parts of our brain are in control. And we literally cannot make decisions or connect well or make the changes that we want to make. So, but the problem is that sometimes that alarm doesn't shut off. And so it makes our brains foggy. If we have ongoing trauma or stress, then we will struggle to bring our brains back online. And it makes it very hard to make good decisions and to connect. So, like I said, it makes our brains foggy, process slower. It's kind of like having too many windows up on the computer. And the computer is either being very slow or it just kind of shuts down on you. But the good news is it can change. For change to occur, we actually have to calm our brains, and the triggers need to be removed or minimized through experiential or sensory reprocessing, and that's usually through counseling. There's other ways, but counseling is definitely one way to do that. And then other things like yoga, meditation, prayer, group and individual counseling, grounding and calming techniques. So all of that is very helpful. Also music and art, any other creative outlets, those all help retrain our brains how to respond to stress. We have to tell our brains it's okay. What the alarm is over. And so it's kind of like when you're cooking in the kitchen and the fire alarm goes off. Well, there's not a real threat, but the problem is our brains don't know the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat. And so it makes our bodies react. And so we can't just get over it. We have to actually retrain our brains, like I mentioned. We can't just, through the power of our will, change how our bodies are reacting.
Okay, now I understand that, but now the holidays are over. We We've experienced a lot of things. A lot of people going back to work, families going home, kids going back to college. What are some issues or some of the biggest issues that people struggle with?
Well, definitely stress. There's stress depending on the time of year. All that stress changes. So we just got through with holiday stress, but now there's the stress of taxes and getting back into school and getting back into routine. Those are really difficult things. But there's also other stressors. Maybe things came up with family during the holidays, or maybe we have financial stress now because we spent a lot during Christmas time, or, you know, there's all kinds of stressors, and it does go in cycles through the year. But I think the biggest thing is how we respond to the stress. And so that comes down to shame and contempt. So we go through these cycles of shame and contempt because how we deal with stress is, or pain and shame, is that we typically have a negative self-statement, like, I'm not good enough, or why can't I get that right? And those things cause us to have certain negative feelings, which cause us to have negative actions, which leads to the cycle of shame and contempt. So what that looks like, so we have that negative self-statement, like, I'm not good enough. And then we deal with it by either stuffing it or blaming or criticizing, trying too hard, trying harder, working more, avoiding. And all of that is contempt towards God, self, or others. And so then we further the contempt because we're not dealing with things quite the right way. So it perpetuates the cycle of shame, because when all of our efforts to deal with our pain don't work, whether it's drugs, alcohol, workaholism, food, relationships, when we deal with things in those contemptuous ways, then when that doesn't work, then we try something different. It doesn't make us feel better. It makes us feel more ashamed because we didn't get it. Or there might be temporary change, but then we kind of find ourselves back in that cycle. And so it ends up being more contempt, which makes us hide more, become more stuck in the cycle, and we have to interrupt that cycle.
So Natalie, here at WYTV7 network, which that's what we're a part of on What's Your Testimony, we have millions of listeners that listen to our broadcast, and we want to reach out to them and let them know that there is help. You know, there's a mental health hotline, and that number is 1-800-969-6642. But since we're talking locally, how would I choose a counselor locally? And maybe I'm afraid to go to counseling. You know, what would I do?
Yeah, so there's a lot of resources that are online. You can get a counselor online if you don't have one near you. Some of those are good and some of them are not so good. But you can look on online counseling directories. So some of those are like Psychology Today, Theravive, Good Therapy. So I'm listed on all of those. Many counselors are listed on all of those, and it shows a directory of therapists in your area, and each of the counselors has a profile that tells you what they specialize in and how they might fit your needs, and what you just have to look through those and see who resonates with you, who gives you a sense of, yeah, I feel like this person I can relate to. If you're afraid of going to counseling, though, maybe you want to start out with doing like a book or a workbook. There's lots of great resources. Podcasts are very helpful. And so finding the right resources, that can be a challenge. But maybe just starting out with something that speaks to your issue that you're wanting to work through. So if you've got marital issues, you may look up some marriage books and see if there's something that really gets you connected with, oh, this is where I can go with this issue. So you can go to a bookstore and look that way at various books and magazines, resources. You can work yourself through a workbook to get started. But if you're just wondering, how do I even get connected to a counselor who I know is going to help me with those internal struggles, I like listening to a podcast from the Allender Center. I like listening to Brene Brown. I like listening to Sue Johnson and John Gottman. So those are some places that I get some of my material from, and because all of us need care. All of us have things that come up in our lives or that have been plaguing us from the past, like that mold in the fridge. And we all have something that we can benefit from in counseling. It's just finding what fits for you, what is going to guide you through that process. So
Natalie, I know, and I don't know how often, but I know you do some workshops. So
yeah.
How often do you do workshops, and how would I go about being a part of a workshop for mental health?
Well, I do something about once a quarter. I do have something coming up soon. It's a trauma workshop, and I say trauma loosely in this situation. I focus on body, mind, and spirit, and how has stress or trauma affected all of us. And so it's kind of a broad workshop, but it does deal with some of these significant issues that may be addressed, such as that shame and contempt cycle, such as the main issues that trauma affects and how we deal with it. So to keep up to date on what workshops that I might have to offer, my website is www.restoringjourneys.com. That's RestoringJourneys, restoringjourneys.com. So that will keep people up to date. I will say I am due to have a baby in February, so my workshops are going to go more online. I'm going to be having more online services. A lot of those, as far as clients go, I can only see clients online in North Carolina. But my workshops and those kinds of things are for anybody. And so some of them will be in person, and I just try to keep it updated on my website. But a lot of therapists have something going on like that, and a lot of them are listed on some of those counselor directories as well.
So if you're a listener out, if you're a WYTV7 listener, or you know someone who's having mental health challenge, please reach out to them. Please let them know that it is okay to get help. There's so many resources out there. Natalie's told us about podcasts. She's told us about book material. We also will feature the telephone number, the 1-800-969-6642, which is the mental health hotline here on our website. So if you are having any issues and you know someone, please reach out to them. And Natalie, can you give your information one more time, please?
Yeah, my website is www.restoringjourneys.com. My phone number, which is my direct cell, is 980-253-9841. And I can be emailed at counselornatalie@restoringjourneys.com.
Well, Natalie, we have enjoyed you, and we thank you for being a part of our show at What's Your Testimony. And if our listeners have enjoyed us, please reach out and watch our broadcast. And if you would like to be a guest on our show, you can reach out to WYTV7.org and be a part of our show. If you know someone who wants to be a part of our show, please reach out to us. And if you would like to make a donation to WYTV7, you can go to WYTV7.org so that you can continue this year listening to more of our broadcasts. And I am Sharita Williams, and I would like to thank you and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Yeah.